The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the enclosure, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. In the corner, partially obscured by a cluster of bamboo plants and draped in a pink blanket, Coco sat silently. Her large, dark eyes, windows to a soul far more complex than most humans cared to acknowledge, observed the gathering crowd with a mixture of curiosity and weariness. Dr. Penelope "Penny" Patterson adjusted her glasses and brushed a strand of graying hair from her face as she approached the enclosure. After nearly 4 decades together, she could read Coco's moods as easily as flipping through the pages of a well-worn book. Today, something was different. The 46-year-old Western lowland gorilla seemed contemplative, almost solemn. "Good morning, my sweet girl," Penny signed, her hands moving with the fluidity that comes only from years of practice. Coco's massive hands, capable of crushing with extraordinary strength, yet delicate enough to cradle a kitten, responded with surprising vigor. "Penny, come. Coco happy. Important talk today." Penny tilted her head, intrigued. In their long journey together, Coco never ceased to surprise her. What had begun as a graduate research project at Stanford University in 1972 had evolved into a lifelong commitment, a profound cross-species friendship that had changed the way the world viewed animal cognition. "I'm listening, Coco," Penny signed. "What's on your mind?" Little did Penny know that this conversation would shake her understanding of not just Coco, but of humanity itself. To understand the magnitude of this moment, one must return to the beginning, to a small, sickly infant gorilla born at the San Francisco Zoo on July 4, 1971. Named Hanabi Ko, Japanese for fireworks child, due to her Independence Day birth, she would soon be known simply as Coco. When Coco was barely a year old, she contracted a life-threatening illness. The zoo veterinarians worked tirelessly to save her, but the ordeal left her weakened and rejected by her mother, a devastating blow for a young primate whose early development depended heavily on maternal bonding. Enter Penny Patterson, then a 24-year-old graduate student in developmental psychology at Stanford. With the optimism of youth and a deeply held belief that gorillas possessed far greater cognitive abilities than science acknowledged, Penny convinced the zoo to allow her to work with Coco for her dissertation research on interspecies communication. "I remember the first time I saw her," Penny would later recall to her colleague, Dr. Ronald Cohn, who had joined the project in 1976. "She was this tiny thing, so vulnerable yet so present. Her eyes followed me with such awareness. I knew immediately that there was someone in there, a mind, a personality." The early days were challenging. Setting up a trailer near the zoo to serve as their classroom, Penny began teaching Coco Modified American Sign Language, a form of ASL adapted for gorilla hands. Progress was slow at first, but Coco proved an eager student. By age 4, Coco had mastered over 200 signs. By adulthood, her vocabulary would expand to more than 1,000 signs, with comprehension of nearly 2,000 words of spoken English. More remarkably, Coco began combining signs in novel ways to express complex thoughts, demonstrating not just mimicry but true understanding. When Coco wanted to refer to a ring but didn't know the sign, she combined the signs for finger and bracelet to create finger bracelet. When she first tasted wine, she signed grape drink sad, suggesting she understood its bitter quality compared to grape juice. Dr. Herbert Terrace, a skeptical primatologist from Columbia University, once visited to assess whether Coco was truly communicating or simply responding to subtle cues from her handlers. After a day of observation, he left visibly shaken. "I came here to debunk," he admitted to Penny, "but what I've seen, she's not just signing, she's communicating. There's someone home in there." In 1979, facing space limitations at the zoo and seeking more freedom for their expanding research, Penny and Ron established the Gorilla Foundation in Woodside, California. They negotiated with the zoo to bring Coco to their new facility permanently. The foundation's primary mission: interspecies communication research and gorilla conservation. The Woodside facility became Coco's kingdom. With indoor and outdoor enclosures, trees to climb, toys to play with, and most importantly, constant intellectual stimulation, Coco thrived. She developed routines, preferences, and quirks that highlighted her increasingly evident personality. She enjoyed watching TV, particularly Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. She had favorite foods, sweet fruits, especially red apples, favorite colors, red and pink, and even favorite celebrities, Robin Williams, whose visit in 2001 would become legendary when Coco, recognizing him from his films, immediately embraced him and even picked his pocket. Martin Gonzalez, a caretaker who joined the foundation in the mid-1980s, remembered his first encounters with Coco with a sense of wonder that never diminished. "I thought I was prepared," he said, his weathered face breaking into a smile. "I'd worked with chimps before, but Coco was something else entirely. On my third day, she signed to me that my shirt was dirty and I should change it. I looked down, and sure enough, there was a coffee stain I hadn't noticed. How do you prepare for that kind of observation from an animal? It was at Woodside that Coco's more complex behaviors began to emerge. She demonstrated not just language acquisition, but humor, deception, empathy, and grief, qualities long considered uniquely human. Perhaps no chapter in Coco's life demonstrated her emotional depth more clearly than her relationship with a small, tailless kitten she named All Ball. For her 12th birthday in 1983, after repeatedly signing to Penny that she wanted a cat, Coco was allowed to select a kitten from a litter. She carefully examined each one before choosing a gray male Manx. When asked what she wanted to name him, she signed All Ball, perhaps referring to the kitten's tendency to curl up into a ball when held. Coco treated All Ball with astonishing gentleness. She would carry the kitten like a baby, attempt to nurse it, and even try to sign with its paws. Each morning, All Ball would visit Coco's enclosure, and the 300-pound gorilla would delicately groom and play with the tiny feline, signing soft and good repeatedly. Their unlikely friendship captured worldwide attention, featured in National Geographic and numerous television programs. But tragedy struck 6 months later when All Ball escaped the foundation grounds and was killed by a car. When Penny had to break the news to Coco, she approached with trepidation. How does one explain death to a gorilla? As it turned out, Coco already understood all too well. Upon learning of All Ball's death, Coco signed "Bad, Sad, Bad" and "Frown, Cry, Frown, Sad." Later that day, researchers heard soft whimpering sounds coming from her enclosure, sounds they had never heard her make before. Dr. Cohn documented her behavior in the following weeks: reduced appetite, minimal communication, and long periods of sitting alone, looking at pictures of All Ball. It was grief, raw and unmistakable. That was when many skeptics finally came around, Dr. Cohn noted in his research journal. They could deny her language acquisition as clever training, but there was no denying her grief. It was too real, too human. In the years that followed, Coco would have other kittens, including Ms. Gray, Smokey, and later, a pair of kittens named Lipstick and Smokey. But her bond with All Ball remained singular in its intensity. She kept a picture of All Ball near her sleeping area until her final days. Not everyone embraced the Coco phenomenon. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, the scientific community remained divided on the interpretation of Coco's abilities. Critics pointed to methodological concerns, the lack of double-blind studies, the potential for unconscious cueing from handlers, and the tendency toward anthropomorphism in interpreting Coco's signs. Some linguists argued that true language requires syntax and grammar that Coco had not demonstrably mastered. Dr. Thomas Sebiok of Indiana University, a prominent semiotician, once remarked, "What we're seeing with Coco may be extraordinary communication, but it's not language in the human sense. The danger is in projecting our linguistic framework onto animal communication systems that may operate on entirely different principles." The controversy intensified when the Foundation claimed that Coco had an IQ between 70 and 90, placing her cognitive abilities on par with those of a young human child. While this claim attracted media attention, it also drew criticism from psychologists who questioned the validity of administering human IQ tests to non-human subjects. Then came the more sensational claims. In a fundraising newsletter, the Foundation mentioned that Coco had briefly driven a golf cart under careful supervision. While the reality was more modest, she had merely held the steering wheel while the cart was in motion. The story took on a life of its own in media reports. More troubling was a 2005 lawsuit filed by two former female employees who alleged they were pressured to expose their breasts to Coco after the gorilla had supposedly signed requests to see them. The Foundation maintained that Coco had an innocent fascination with human anatomy, and no employee was ever directed to comply with inappropriate requests. The suit was settled out of court, but it cast a shadow over the project. Despite these controversies, the core of Coco's achievements remained remarkable and well documented. She had demonstrated abilities that expanded our understanding of gorilla cognition, and by extension, animal consciousness. Among the most compelling demonstrations of Coco's self-awareness was her response to mirrors. The mirror test is considered a key assessment of self-recognition in animals. Most species react to their reflection as if it were another animal, attacking it or displaying social behaviors. Only a few species, including great apes, elephants, dolphins, and some birds, recognize that the reflection is themselves. When first presented with a mirror at age 3, Coco initially reached behind it, looking for the other gorilla. Within days, however, she began using the mirror to examine parts of herself she couldn't otherwise see, picking food from her teeth or adjusting her hair. Most tellingly, when researchers secretly placed a dot of red dye on her forehead while she was sedated for a medical exam, upon waking and seeing herself in a mirror, she immediately touched the spot on her own forehead, not the mirror. That moment was definitive, Penny noted in her research logs. She wasn't just responding to the mirror image as a strange gorilla. She understood it was her, with something unusual on her face. That's self-recognition at its most basic level. This self-awareness extended to more abstract realms. Coco showed signs of understanding mortality, both of others and potentially of herself. After learning about the death of All Ball, she began occasionally signing about the concept of death, using phrases like sleep no wake to describe it. Even more remarkably, Coco demonstrated what psychologists call theory of mind, the understanding that others have thoughts, feelings, and intentions that may differ from one's own. She would play simple pranks, like hiding objects and feigning innocence, suggesting she understood that she knew something others did not. By 2018, Coco had reached 46, elderly for a gorilla in captivity. Her movements had slowed, her once jet black fur now flecked with gray. The Foundation had grown, with additional gorillas including Michael, who had also learned sign language before his death in 2000, and Ndume, who remained as Coco's companion. Penny, now in her 70s, still visited daily, their morning conversations a ritual that spanned nearly half a century. The young graduate student and the baby gorilla had grown old together, their lives intertwined in ways neither science nor society had anticipated. On a cool June morning, just days before her 47th birthday, Coco seemed unusually pensive. She had slept poorly the night before, according to night staff, and had eaten little of her breakfast. When Penny arrived, Coco was sitting by the window, watching birds in the nearby trees. "Coco tired today," she signed slowly. "Do you need to rest more?" Penny asked, concern evident in her rapid signs. "No, Coco think much. About people, about Earth." Penny pulled her chair closer to the enclosure. In recent years, Coco had shown increasing interest in environmental issues, responding emotionally to videos about deforestation and endangered species that Penny showed her as part of her enrichment activities. "Penny, listen. Important," Coco signed, her movements deliberate, focused. "People smart. People make things, big things, but people forget." "Forget what, Coco?" Penny prompted, intrigued by this philosophical turn. "Forget Earth, forget animals, forget love." Coco paused, seeming to search for the right signs. Gorilla, remember, Earth mother, animals brothers, love important. Penny felt a chill run through her. In all their years together, Coco had never strung together such an abstract thought about humanity's relationship with the natural world. "People hurry, hurry, hurry. No time see beauty, no time feel heart. Coco sad for people." Penny's hands trembled slightly as she responded. "You're right, Coco. People often forget what's important." Coco not forget. Coco remember All Ball. Remember Michael. Remember trees and birds and sky. People remember too, before too late. It was as if, in her twilight years, Coco had distilled a lifetime of observing humans into one poignant observation. In our rush toward progress, we had lost our connection to the natural world, to other species, and perhaps to each other. Tears welled in Penny's eyes as she signed, "I promise to help people remember, Coco." The gorilla nodded slowly, then reached her massive hand through the enclosure bars. Penny placed her much smaller hand against Coco's palm, a gesture they had shared countless times over the decades. In that moment of contact, the artificial boundaries between human and animal, researcher and subject, seemed to dissolve. 3 days later, in her sleep, Coco passed away peacefully. The announcement made headlines worldwide. Coco, the gorilla who knew sign language, dies at 46. But few news reports captured the profound impact of her final message, her gentle indictment of human disconnection from the natural world. At Coco's memorial service, attended by researchers, caretakers, and supporters from around the world, Penny shared the details of their final, substantive conversation. The response was overwhelming. Many wept openly at the gorilla's insight and compassion. Dr. Jane Goodall, the renowned primatologist who had visited Coco several times over the years, spoke eloquently about what Coco had taught humanity. Critics have long asked what we learn from teaching human language to other species, she said, her voice soft yet commanding. But perhaps the more important question is, what do they teach us when given the tools to communicate? Coco showed us that the divide between humans and other animals is not the unbridgeable chasm we once thought. She reminded us that awareness, empathy, love, grief, these are not human inventions. They are ancient evolutionary gifts that we share with our cousins in the animal kingdom. In the weeks following Coco's death, the Gorilla Foundation released selected video clips from their decades of research, including footage of Coco's environmental concerns and her expressions of empathy. One clip, showing Coco signing about the beauty of forests after watching a nature documentary, went viral, viewed over 50 million times across social media platforms. The public response was transformative. Donations to great ape conservation efforts surged. Several universities established new research programs in interspecies communication. Most significantly, a congressional hearing on endangered species protection referenced Coco's observations, with one senator remarking, "When a being from another species can recognize what we're doing to this planet more clearly than we can, it's time to reassess our priorities." For Martin Gonzalez, who had spent decades as one of Coco's caretakers, the impact was deeply personal. 6 months after Coco's passing, he established the Coco's Wisdom program, bringing at-risk youth to observe gorillas at several major zoos, teaching them about conservation and empathy through the lens of Coco's story. These kids, many of them have never connected with anything in their lives, he explained to a local newspaper. But something about Coco's story reaches them. When they learn that this gorilla could feel love, grief, compassion, suddenly they realize they're not alone in those feelings. It opens something in them. Emily Chen, a 14-year-old participant in the program who had previously been in juvenile detention, put it succinctly, "If Coco could learn to talk with humans, maybe humans can learn to listen to each other and to the planet." Penny Patterson continued her work at the foundation, focusing on analyzing the decades of data they had collected and caring for Ndum. Though advanced in years herself, she embarked on a lecture tour, sharing Coco's final message with audiences across America and beyond. "Coco challenged us to see the world through different eyes," she would say at the conclusion of each talk. "She asked us to remember what truly matters, our connection to the earth, to other species, to each other. The question now is, will we listen?" In a small corner of the foundation grounds, under a canopy of redwood trees, a simple memorial marks Coco's final resting place. The plaque bears no lengthy epitaph, no list of scientific achievements or media appearances. Instead, it shows an imprint of Coco's hand alongside a human hand, Penny's, and 3 simple words in American Sign Language: remember, earth, love. Visitors to the site often report a profound sense of peace, as if even in death, Coco continues to communicate across the species barrier, reminding us that in a world of artificial divisions, the capacity for connection remains our most precious inheritance. And occasionally, if one sits quietly enough beneath those towering redwoods, the soft California breeze might carry what sounds almost like a whisper. The gentle reminder of a gorilla who reached across the divide and touched our humanity in ways we're still coming to understand.